Our system, when you consume something, you are not digesting it and having all of those nutrients distributed to your cells. It's not how it works. You give yourself different components. Your body is going to synthesize the frequencies and distribute what information it's able to gather from that.
The human pineal gland is a transducer
and transmitter.
And that transmitter, and it's our communication device between reality or physical matter and hyperspace. And those chemicals, those metals you're talking about, they just happen to be like if you listen to Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, he talks about
that's my guy.
He talks about how just those particular three metals, which just happen to be the most toxic to the human pineal gland, glyphosate, aluminum, and fluoride, just happen to by accident be the most prevalent toxins in our environment.
And it's the hardest part for people to accept, that if you buy into the fact that we're in the Matrix. Okay, great. Let's look at the symbolism that was in the Matrix. What did Neo have to he began to see that the world around him maybe wasn't what it was. He began to see and be provided clues. But then he needed to find someone in that situation, and it was designed as a person so you could see it, and there's symbolism and everything. Who was it? Happened to be Trinity.
We're at that point where the magic of what we create is so profound that people don't realize that even their own limitations are a profound creation of that magic. They just have to redirect their energy and apply it in different ways. We're still not there, and we're still getting there, but we're like, that's kind of maybe what the Rainbow Bridge is about, when they talk about with Buddhism and trying to reach like nirvana and the bodhisattvas stay back because they're trying to create this interconnection between both of these frequency states, right?
Yes, you can use that to attach graphene to it to make supermolecules. But let's look at the real science of that. So what you're saying is it has the ability to bind graphene. It has the ability to bind viruses. It has the ability to bind mercury, lead, aluminum, cesium, strontium, gadolinium, all these other glyphosate, all of these other environmental components that, yes, if you were using it from a bioscience engineering standpoint over here, that you could create different nanostructures with it. But what if you had a nanobiotechnologist with a background in bioscience engineering and 20 years in history that's done cloning, that's done molecular design, that understands quantum physics, that maybe went back to Harvard and did 3 years at Harvard in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering, that maybe has gone to Cornell and done two programs in pharmaceutical management and nutritional counseling, that happened to spend 20 years in biotech at Pfizer, kind of important, Alexion, Biogen, IDEC, Johnson & Johnson, UCB, Bristol Myers Squibb, kind of important, and Janssen, maybe when she was at Bristol Myers Squibb 17 years ago, she was working on HIV research and mRNA vaccines. I don't know, is that relevant?
Welcome to Cyber Hive, everyone. Today I have with me a very special guest, Clayton Thomas. It's an honor to have this conversation with you, Clayton. And for people who don't know who you are, I guess I'll just go through some basic biographical info. Clayton has a unique background in integrative therapies, and he's a research scientist that started actually in animal health. And he has a degree in humanities with a focus in communication, business, kinesiology, and his broad studies have allowed for a history that includes research and formula development. Very interesting topic, actually. Clayton is happily married to Dr. Christina Rahm, who is a very, very interesting person as well, together with whom he launched a company called Root, which came to life through the desire they both had to fundamentally reimagine the path to wellness, to help each individual with the knowledge and solutions to tackle some of the biggest health challenges we're facing today. Can't be enough of those companies. A toxic environment, stress, and unhappiness. Those are the things that we're all facing. So he and his wife, Christina, saw that there were different needs, different people to help. And so they came together with an idea to bring these super high quality products to the entire world based on their core values, which is integrity, authenticity, simplicity, and education. So we're going to get into some of that today for sure. Clayton has served as a business development specialist in every aspect of wellness. Very important if you want to get information out there these days. You need to know how to get it out there. So he's in sales, distribution, formulation, creation, consulting, wow, manufacturing, And now he's the architect of an entirely new method of business with Root social sharing community platform, which I have a little bit of familiarity with. Beautiful. So just for you, Clayton, I'll tell you a little background on me so you have kind of a context on where I'm coming from and where I want to take this conversation today. There's a war, currently a war going on, I would say, for consciousness. It's on our physical bodies. And there's this movement to divert human consciousness toward something called transhumanism, which is away from natural organic life into a different form of life, a more synthetic form of life, also connected in some ways to something called artificial intelligence. And there's technologies that have been in development for decades now that are used to block our energetic signature, you could say, and alter and affect and change it in a way, kind of reading and rewriting code, the code of life in our bodies in a way that enhances what they're shooting for, these other people, this transhumanist agenda. And so these mRNA vaccines that are out there are kind of just the latest publicly known development toward these goals. And because these goals have been going on, let's face it, for some time, and so there's this race on right now for conscious, aware people who are not down with this agenda to protect, to detoxify, to energize, and to support the organic human body and its defensive systems. So I was on a lot of shows a couple of years back, or starting a couple of years back. It just started to escalate because I was talking about something called timelines and the split of humanity in kind of two primary directions. And it made a lot of sense to some people. And I was contacted by a woman called Elizabeth Ely, who you might know, who's a very, very, educated and interested roots supporting person. And she reached out and suggested that I actually try these root products, which I did, because if I was going to find something which I think supported this idea of the human defense system of detoxification, I have to try it before I go to anybody with it. That's kind of my policy. I'm not a scientist. I don't have a dark field microscope here in the house, but I'm a filmmaker and I present things and I travel a lot and I have a lot of public speaking engagements and I'm in contact with a lot of people. So I come into contact and I don't have this aversion to hugging people, even though, I mean, a lot of people are, averse to that, right? So I also work together, luckily, with my partner, Tanya. We have a network of scientists and researchers over in Europe, because that's where we're situated, primarily in Germany, like, for example, biophysicists and others. And we talk about consciousness, we talk about frequency, we talk about the Schumann resonance, the cosmos, and a variety of other things and how it all kind of interconnects and try to understand and navigate this crazy world and crazier getting world that we're in. And so in 2021, we obviously started hearing a lot about shedding and this idea of these particles that are out there. And even though I personally don't subscribe to germ theory, I do know that technologies exist that are on a very microscopic level. And, so it makes a lot of sense, right? And it's even in the published patent documents of companies like Pfizer talking about it. And when I started seeing some of the dark field microscopy of Dr. David Nixon, showing structures, what looks like microchips and other strange things being built within our blood or being built within these substances that were extracted from these mRNA vaccines, it's kind of freaky stuff to see, right? So I decided, and then I found this other woman called Dr. Anna Mochia, and she's kind of on the forefront of publishing information and making people aware of these technologies, which you can basically describe as weaponized nanotechnology. Some people call them bio weapons and whatnot. I don't really know if that's the proper designation, but I definitely do believe that these are weaponized technologies targeting specifically the human genome. And the reason that she's come up again recently is because she put out a paper, or she didn't put it out, she commented on this paper that was talking about zeolite, right? And since I've been using Clean Slate and I've been recommending Clean Slate, and zeolite apparently is one of the ingredients of zeolite. And I was over here in Europe. I started having people calling me up, Clayton, or writing me saying, what are you doing? This is all just like everything out there claiming zeolite. It's all just phony baloney. It doesn't really work. This is just like everything else. It's expensive product, money-making business scam, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to take a step back, but I can only say from my own personal experience, I've been using this stuff and some of your other products as well. I have some of them right here. I got Zero In. I love Zero In.
You're getting into my favorites.
I use this immune defense shield because
yes,
totally believe in it because like I said, I travel a lot and I go places and of course clean slate. So I wanted to know like if there's anything to this because I can't say that that I feel any like things have a certain vibration. We can get into that a little bit.
Yep.
And I feel and also my partner Tanya, who's been using them as well, we definitely feel an energy off of these products that is very, very unique. And one of the things that really impresses me, I think, about all of the formulations that that Christina Rahm comes up with is that they, having a background also in nutrition and having helped people through using food to heal their bodies, I feel that a lot of supplements out on the market are actually potentially toxic because they're so concentrated that the body doesn't understand what the hell they are. So they are, they're actually tasking and stressing the body. And I like what I've seen in the root products is that they seem to emulate natural food, or they have a lot of natural food components in them. So I look at them often more as food than I do as supplements.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So are you down for a discussion on all this stuff?
Why is it taking so long for us to get together? I'm making notes in front of me based on what you were just going over, and everything that you said is absolutely accurate. But within this world that we live in, there's absolute truth, but then there's ways of bending narratives to try to redirect facts, truth, and reality, to spin a narrative. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we've seen over the last decade. But honestly, as you mentioned, we're not dealing with something made of the last 4 years, right? And this is what people are looking at. They're like, oh my God, I'm like, when people started talking about graphene, they're like, do you know that there's graphene? I'm like, they've been putting graphene in products for over 40 years. It's like, do you not understand that the original literature that was published on everything that I function on was research done in the 1950s? It was published in the 1970s, and it was an absolute fact. And if you don't go back to look at where we started from and what the games have been and you hit on the truth. We are part of the world that we live in, this planet that we live in, however you want to look at it. When you look at ley lines, when you look at the energetics, the resonance, the frequencies of what this environment is. It's 70% water, 17% silica, quite important in where we're going to go in conversation, and a mixture of other minerals and other components. And is it not odd that the human body consists of 70% water, 17% silica, quite important for where we're going to go in conversation, and a mixture of other elements? We are that which we live in, that which we come from. Some might argue that could be determined as intelligent design. Yet, we're not binary. We're quantum, right? So it's not a matter of looking at ones and zeros and going, oh, we can do this, we can do this. If we add one here, we can do this. Oh, this ingredient, vitamin D, vitamin C, whatever you want. Oh, we need a lot of this. No, you don't. We're freaking too complex, right? So you have to have a higher level of intelligence and a great level of understanding, both scientifically and as a human, as a species, and maybe some, you can say, extraterrestrial intelligence, maybe, to really understand the operating system that we're playing with. So when you begin to understand these things, then you can really start to dive into where we are scientifically. I want an invitation to talk to all these other scientists and people you got, because those are the people I love to geek out with. But let's go. Where do we want to start? As you hit on one of the first things I think is most important. The event that we live in right now, the world that we live in. People are like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This is what's going on." No, there's one of two scenarios that's playing out simultaneously, right? Are there multiple dimensions that are happening? Or do we live in a fractal holographic universe? Yeah, we do. Right. So are there multiple scenarios running simultaneously that are overlaid that our free will has an opportunity to dictate, manage, and manipulate? So at the same time, we're in the midst of an extinction event, right? And that's not me saying it. That's data. Look at the last 50 years. Look at what's happened to sperm rates. Look at what in men. Look at what's, oh, because there's only two, right? There's women and men. Sorry, nothing else. We get that out of the way. I don't care what you identify as. My dog sits outside the pod room right now. She's a dog, right? So you have a massive reduction in sperm rates. You have a massive reduction in fertility. You have a massive reduction in birth rates, in women. You have miscarriage rates that have shot through the roof. So what does that mean if a species can't breed and can't replicate? Right. That's an extinction event. We're basically 3 generations from going, bye-bye. We're not here anymore. So, and there's a narrative that goes on about, oh, well, we need to decrease the population. This just in, it has nothing to do with them. It's never had anything to do with them. They're trying to get you to buy into a narrative that they will get you to choose to perform. It's our choice. It's a given called free will, right? So we sit in the midst of an extinction event that is of our choice and of our doing, or an ascension event that allows us to become great, because that's what we are made in the image of. That's where we come from. And you mentioned the health and wellness space. I hate that freaking term. I love the health part. I hate the term wellness, even though it's like when we started Root, we're like, okay, what do we have to name it so people can understand? It's Root Wellness. It's like, look, the Root brand.
These existing terminologies in order to for people to have a starting place, right? And those people who are genuinely interested are they're gonna just start really there and go into it. That's what I like about you. Also provide a lot of materials and information and education, which is very uncommon in terms of other companies offering kind of fortification supplements for their bodies, right? And for your bodies. And I think the key thing that you hit on here is, if you want to start there with quantum space, is very, very important, because this is really what I see it as. There's this dividing line between those people who believe that we are just hunks of meat, and by accident we through billions of years of colliding of atoms and molecules, one day consciousness emerged by total accident, right? No design whatsoever, right? And then there's this other group that really have starting with the whole quantum science field, but the wave structure of matter, for example, interests me personally, and that sort of speaks to the idea that there's consciousness that precedes what we call matter. And what we call matter actually is only just the effect of matter. So there really is nothing solid. It's just these waves, these frequencies, they play as if they're acting like matter. And we have the sensors in the physical space, if we want to call that, to perceive them. But we are not the physical space. We actually are only using these, we could say, this code, this some people call it a simulation. I like to stay away from that, because what is the simulation of, right? How can you tell it's a simulation unless you give somebody something real to compare it to? So I believe very much that there is a reality which is based on this accepted sort of given rule set that we agree to, and we use this wave structure of matter to rein into physical reality, our consciousness, and explore each other. And and bounce off of each other. So these are the two kind of camps, and the one is very much atheistic, and the other one, leans in the direction you also touched on, extraterrestrial realities, which are beginning to emerge. I have personal connection to that, because my partner Tanya and I have just finished a film in that direction, but we don't have to go on. That's not the subject of this talk today. But anyway, I like to define things in the way you just kind of said it, that we have to see things in terms of quantum space, because it's a dead end road, in my opinion, to be looking at this as just rocks and molecules that are an accident. And in that sense, that's where frequency comes in. And I think that's where, one of the first things that I think is important to get out of the way for people is that they don't understand the difference between this idea of frequency and matter, and the idea that your products, I believe, and maybe you can talk about that. Like, is that kind of the inspiration from where you're coming from, where you and Christine come from when you develop your products? And we can talk about that.
Oh, we get to dive into some stuff I've not been able to talk about before.
After
Oh, this is
we
going to
can
be
talk
fun.
about all this weird stuff. So
But the best part is this isn't the weird part. This is reality, right? And is it not funny that the people that think that we're a big chunk of meat also created McDonald's?
Exactly.
Does that not resonate with people? You go, wait a minute. And a lot of people go missing every year and then they're never found, and meat at McDonald's is really inexpensive. I digress. But the important part to understand is that this is a biological antenna. We are a bioelectrical antenna. And if you want to talk frequencies, and you have to talk frequencies, and you want to understand quantum physics, and you want to understand cellular communication, that it is our system. When you consume something, you are not digesting it and having all of those nutrients distributed to your cells. It's not how it works. You give yourself different components. Your body is going to synthesize the frequencies and distribute what information it's able to gather from that. So while you might not follow germ theory per se for someone but if you understand virology, you understand that a virus, whether it's injected into you, whether it's something you're exposed to, whether it's something you inhale, something you ingest, something that gets through your mucosal membranes, wearing a fucking mask ain't gonna help you, right? This is not what it's about. But when you are exposed to something in the environment, we'll say a virus, your body has an immune system. Your body has mRNA and RNA transcriptionase that will take the information from whatever it is you're exposed to, break it down, decode it, because not only are we a quantum computer, everything else around us is biological information, that it will break that down. It'll analyze it. It'll say, okay, I can learn from this, because I added this code. You can look at it as AI, but it's not artificial. It's biological intelligence. And it looks at that, it says, okay, I can use all this. This is going to make me better. You might have a response to it as you upgrade, right? Because that's what getting sick is. It's a specific response to information that you've been provided that you get to learn from. The rest of it is identified as junk and is supposed to be thrown out. Now, you go to the other side of the equation and you have people or entities, maybe, that understand that we are a biological antenna and that we emit frequencies, we download frequencies, and there is a specific gland in the body that is dedicated for our ability to do that, happens to be the pineal gland. And if you knew that we are a biological antenna and you wanted to manage, dictate, control said antenna system, what does an antenna do? It emits frequencies and receives frequencies. So if that's the case, what would you do if you wanted to take over the radio station? Well, one, you might go in the front door or the back door to do it, or you might just go hop on the antenna and just change the receiver, change the emitter. And you got to go back to when we were younger, growing up, when we used to have little television sets, for our programming. And we used to have rabbit ears, and then we'd have a big, antenna on the roof. And what is it made of? Aluminum? Because they're highly transductive and transducive. And mercury has been used in apparently ancient civilizations that are less advanced than we were, that were using copper and bronze and mercury because of its conductivity to send out frequencies and maybe send out electricity. And you look at those things and you go, wait a minute. So if you loaded us with mercury and lead and aluminum, maybe just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit over time, and you allowed this transgenerational aspect of what's in mom to go into babies, to put us in a position where and you add a little fluoride in the water and you put a little fluoride in your mouthwash because you got to take care of your teeth, not understanding it calcifies the one thing that's most important to our, our our use of light. So not just our spiritual aspect, but also controlling the circadian rhythm of the body. And if you controlled the circadian rhythm of the body, you could also change the time. You could just say, we're just gonna shift daylight savings time. We're just gonna shift it an hour here, hour there. Don't worry, it won't bother you any. It's okay. And they can reprogram you because you're no longer able to emit or receive the frequencies that come from here, but from the soft metals that are the cause of every chronic degenerative disease known to man, or that will be, and put you in a position where you're docile, controllable, and malleable.
Okay, and well, you kind of just hit on like so many of the subjects that I've personally been mining and developing. I mean, I just did a webinar called The Inner Looking Glass, which has to do strictly with the pineal gland. And exactly what you're talking about is that the human pineal gland is a transducer.
And transmitter.
And a transmitter. And it's our communication device between reality or physical matter and hyperspace. And those chemicals, those metals you're talking about, they just happen to be like if you listen to Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, he talks about
that's my guy.
He talks about how just those particular three metals, which just happen to be the most toxic to the human pineal gland, glyphosate, aluminum, and fluoride, just happen to by accident be the most prevalent toxins in our environment. I remember watching it where he's saying like, you couldn't plan this. Like, how do you like even plan this, right? There's just a way that
almost like there's a level of knowledge beyond what.
Right, exactly. And, even the idea of like, well, what are there other actors who are behind the scenes whom we know nothing about with the ability to actually make this dispersion prevalent in such an organized way, So I think it's a given that that this is going on the one hand. The other hand is, I have some interesting paper from like Sandia National Labs from 2008 that are talking about developing self-assembling nano sensors, biosensors and biocomputers, and that the human body is perfectly made, because we have something called the wide body area network. And I think it's a subject not a lot of people really understand much about, but we are, like we've been talking about, these antennas, these receivers and transmitters. And so they know this, they've known this for a long time. And this is kind of what they're doing. And I think what made me sit up and take notice about Clean Slate and about your root products is that it seems to me like they're addressing specifically these areas of toxicity. Am I right?
Not just the toxicity aspect. I mean, but this is going to be, the fun part to dive into. Dietrich's one of my favorite guys. So fun note, 19 years ago when I started in this process, I've had two times where God's kind of tapped me on my shoulder and said, follow this, right? Because I'm fortunate now to have about 45 years experience in integrative health and fucking wellness. But in animal and human health, because of where I grew up and growing up in an integrative veterinary practice. And some people are like, well, you can't start that when you're 2. I'm pretty sure you start learning before you're 2. I was studying mineral supplementation when I was 8, right? Wow. And looking at fecal samples and blood samples and looking at parasites and bacteria and how this amazing system works in the human body and in animal bodies, and that we are the same. My dad being a veterinarian, I had this conversation with my dad when I was really young. I'm like, Dad, which is harder to do, to be a doctor or a veterinarian? He's like, veterinarian. I'm like, because you have different species come in every day. One, they don't talk, but they do communicate. So that's important. And telepathically, they do communicate. Like my mom was able to communicate with animals, so they can tell you what's going on. But I'm like, you have different species, different organ systems that you're working on simultaneously. And if you're a doctor, you just get one. That's not hard, But when I was introduced to this concept, actually, one of the first people and this was before even root. This was my first foray into the concept of using clinoptilolite. And God just went, follow that. That's your path. And, it's interesting when you understand our purpose, that each of us, and what Christina wrote in Cure the Causes in her first book, that we are each an imperfect piece to a perfect puzzle, right? And it's a matter of finding how to perfect your piece and knowing where you fit and who you connect to. And so I started playing with stuff, and I've got a really, really innate understanding of how this stuff functions, because I just download like crazy. And that's what happened initially.
Let me just jump in before you continue that. You brought up that word clinoptilolite, right? This is people that are watching should know that this is kind of the component that's found in a lot of supplements that are using zeolite, I guess you would say, right?
Well, and zeolites, this is an important conversation, because it's one of the things that frustrates me to death, right? Is people are like, zeolites. Okay. Zeolite is a class of mineral. It's a class of crystals and clays. So let's look at that in frame of reference, right? Using the term zeolite is using the term tree. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to build a house, and we're going to have all of these nice cabinets and nice floors. We're going to use stuff. What are you going to use? Tree. What? Nice. Do you want oak? Do you want cherry? Do you want cedar? Do you want pine? No, we want tree. We use tree. I mean, it's like, are we an anchor man right now? Right? And people are like, tree. Okay. Note to self, we're not having a conversation, because we are not on the same level. So what you have to understand, that with the term zeolite, you've got things like chabazite, asbestos. Wait, asbestos is a zeolite. Oh, wait. You've got mordandite, hewlandite, clinoptilolite, bentonite, which people are familiar with. So you've got this class of, there's about 84 different crystals and clays. The beautiful part of the way that this intelligent world is designed for us, so this group of crystals and clays was actually created from volcanic eruptions. Now, why is that important in this intelligent design standpoint, and why are crystals important? We'll get into that. But why are these so special? Because volcanic eruptions were and still are the largest natural emitters of environmental toxins that are the most deleterious and detrimental to the environment. Any environment, external and internal. Mercury, lead, these toxins are toxic gases emitted from volcanic eruptions. So when volcanoes, whether it was under the crust or that which was going up, were erupting to create terra firma that we get to participate in, they're emitting all these toxins into the environment. So if there was an intelligent design going on, that same process through ash, lava, would actually mix with the one most prevalent substance on the planet that happens to be seawater. What is seawater? It's not just H2O. You've got a whole lot of trace minerals that are there as well. So the mixture of ash, lava, trace minerals, water created this network of all of these different crystals and clays that are natural remediators of the environment. Had that not ever been done simultaneously with the volcanic eruptions taking place, this place is not inhabitable. So you have all of these different stuff. Have you ever been to Iceland? You've heard people going to Iceland and they get the hot baths and you get the clay. That's bentonite. And you're like, wait a minute, it's healing. If you rub it on your skin, it's outstanding. You can do all this stuff. It's a great mud mask. Right. That's bentonite. So what's intriguing though is there's always symbolism, right? There's all this symbolism that's given to us and, in different aspects, oh, I'm going to take a picture, and I'm not part of that club, by the way. Trust me, I've been invited. I'm invited often. So is my wife. We've been in the circles of all of those beings and species. And there's one thing that is continually stated that they talk about with her, they talk about with me. And it's that she's not from here, which is a whole other line of lineage and bloodlines that we can probably get into if we want to, because it's quite important to the scenario of what you're talking about from a true intelligent design standpoint, because there is a master bloodline. There's 13 other families that are trying to connect to said bloodline. that could be a whole other show, but we'll probably dive into this a little bit.
I got, yeah, I think we have a lot of connection points here.
Yeah. So, and there is one, but so when you get into understanding those things, and Indiana Jones, I think it was the original Indiana Jones, when they had to find the cup of Christ, there was some great symbolism, right? Because they went across the bridge, and then they got to the old man who was guarding, the sanctuary, and they said, choose the cup. And one guy went and he's like, oh, it's the one with the rubies and emeralds on it, and drank from it. He died. And then what did Indy do? He found just the cup that was beat to snot, that didn't look like much. And you go, it's that one, because it's the one that no one would think of. And that's the most powerful one. That's the most influential one. So here's the symbolism in that. Of all these crystals, quartz. Everyone loves quartz. Quartz is a beautiful crystal. It's a resonator. Quartz and crystals can store. I didn't wear any of mine today. I got some of my goodies on, but quartz has this ability to store energy and transfer energy, and is an information storage medium more advanced than other microchips. And why was it in Superman that Superman went to go recharge not just from the sun, but from the Fortress of Solitude that just happened to be all crystals? And he was actually using crystals for all of the stories from recorded history of their history that he would plug in, and it would have all of that data and information stored and replay it for him. I'm sorry, is there symbolism in that we weren't ready for 50 freaking years ago? I'm not sure. But if you look at that, so there's one of these crystals that is the ugly one. There's one of these crystals that's been used throughout history for its ability to remediate water and the environment, right? What was interesting is we knew the Romans were lining the aqueducts with this crystal because they had a lead problem in their water. When they started doing this, they could drink their water as it ran down from the mountains through their aqueducts. They were able to do it. When they didn't do it, they got Nero. Problem. But what was discovered in 2019 or 2020? Amazing that it took this long to do it, because they had to go into the jungle to figure this out. At the same time in history that the Romans were doing this, the Mayans were using the same thing. Interesting. Maybe there was a communication network that we're not, I don't know. Maybe I digress. There's one, and that same substance is what's used to make kitty litter. Interesting enough. But that same substance has been used for about 50 years in drug delivery. So cleans up the environment, binds nitrogen and ammonia, which is actually quite important if you were going to grow agriculture, because it can be in topsoil and help deliver nitrogen and ammonia back into plants and would prevent runoff from all the nutrients. If you are over farming or dealing with different environmental influences, it also binds glyphosate, almost like that a substance that was done millennia, however 100 billion, whatever time frame we work on, when this was originally done, that substance actually remediates glyphosate before Monsanto had the idea to give us AIDS. Wow, that's intelligent design. And this substance has the ability to bind graphene and has the most dynamic antiviral properties available on the market, and has the ability to be used in drug delivery, and amplifies the effect of other nutrients, and just so happens to be nature's most bioavailable source of orthosilicic acid. Now, what is that? Well, that's bioavailable silica. Why is that important? Because we're a biological computer. We are quantum. What makes computers run? What's made these so special? Microchips, right? I mean, I remember my first phone, my bag phone initially, then my flip phone, and I remember our first computer. And now computers are smaller than this with greater processing speed than anything we've seen in history. And it's the one thing. Why is NVIDIA so popular? Because they make microchips. What's microchips made from? Silica.
Exactly.
Symbolism, maybe. Why is Silicon Valley so valuable? Why did they name it Silicon? Maybe symbolism, truth.
Well, let me
But
jump in here on that point because you're bringing up this idea of bioavailability. This is a word that maybe a lot of people don't really understand what it means, because this is going back to what I started with, the idea that there's a lot of supplements out there which are purporting to bring minerals and vitamins into your body, but they are not they don't have this availability factor. And that means that they're not absorbed, right, by the body. And I think this is where we're going, I think, in this conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the difference between tree and finely crafted coffee table is this idea of bioavailability. In other words, bioavailability means that it's something which makes it available to your bioorganism, which means, because we're 70% water, that it has to be soluble, it has to be absorbable into our bodies, right? For it to work. Otherwise, it
allegedly.
passes by. Otherwise, it blocks actually our system. It might have all the functionality of what you were saying, binding things. And I think this is what was coming out in this paper that I was referencing in the very beginning, that was analyzed by Dr. Anna Machio. She was talking about how this zeolite can actually enhance the factor of these substances clotting and building and growing in your body by a factor of multiple, levels, right? And that would make it actually dangerous. So it might be true that zeolite
But
does that, but I think what you're going at here, and this is what I would like to know, and I think what the audience wants to know, is that the kind of the factors that are involved in producing the silica that you're talking about and integrating it in your products themselves make use of this bioavailability factor in order to deliver certain things into your cells. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Make it like on the on the kindergarten
I'm
level.
going to give you one word. This is, I should just keep this up here for everybody.
Yeah.
This is the most important thing for you to accept in your life right now. What if everything that we think about, what we consume, what we take, what we put on our skin, has nothing to do with absorption? What if it's all about quantum communication? Because everything is frequency.
Right.
Are frequencies more conductive or more functional underwater or outside of water? Do whales and dolphins communicate with frequencies underwater that can go miles and miles and miles, that can go all around the planet, actually, with one pulse? Is that odd that water is actually more conductive of electricity and frequencies than air, and we're 70% water? So is the question about absorption, or is the question about bioscience engineering and frequency? Because if it's about frequencies, then we have to apply the understanding of frequencies to absolutely everything that we are and everything that we do. Because if you don't, you're talking tree. And we're talking quantum mechanics. And this is the hardest part for people to understand in a world where you have 8 billion idiots that are talking tree, and you've got a couple that are talking quantum mechanics and that understand quantum mechanics. And maybe one of them was teaching her kids quantum physics when they were 5. And they might be my kids, right? And this is what's so important to understand, is that if you understand this, and that maybe you watch The Matrix and you think, oh, we live in a matrix. Okay, you know what? Own it. If that's the case, own it. But one of my favorite pieces of moviedom actually came from a movie called Higher Learning, which was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I think John Singleton came out with Higher Learning in like 93, 94, or something like that. And you can go, and it's about racism. It's about all of the problems that were going on in humanity at the time. And funny enough, all that shit is still going on now. But the end of the movie, right before the credits, when they fade to black after the last scene, one word on the screen, it still gives me antennas to pop up when I say it. It's one word that came up. You know what the word was?
Unlearn.
Right? And you
That's a
go,
big word. That is probably that is the word of that's the zeitgeist of our times, Clayton. We have to unlearn so much, right? There's so much.
no, you have to accept that everything is
Right.
bullshit.
Right, exactly.
All of it. And it's the hardest part for people to accept, that if you buy into the fact that we're in the Matrix. Okay, great. Let's look at the symbolism that was in the Matrix. Oh, Neo knew that he was in the Matrix. No, he didn't. What did Neo have to he began to see that the world around him maybe wasn't what it was. He began to see and be provided clues. But then he needed to find someone in that situation, and it was designed as a person so you could see it, and there's symbolism in everything. Who was it? Happened to be Trinity. Right? And why is the Trinity important? I don't know. Maybe this entire system is built on 3, 6, 9 and not ones and zeros. And maybe there's symbolism in everything. Maybe that the introduction of the Trinity being clean slate, zero in and restore, that's actually patented. It has a patent on the reversal of aging of your hair, your skin, your nails, which makes up everything. And once he found Trinity, then he was able to get plugged in, right? So he wasn't functioning in the environment, in the world that he was in. And how did he go about this? What did they do? Oh, they went right here and plugged him in. So what did they do? They actually tapped in to a direct line to his pineal gland. And what did they do? They shot it with a whole shitload of light. And that opened up his ability to begin understanding the reality of everything around him. None of it. None. Zero. Wasn't it, 5% of, what I was used to, I get to hold on to, right? Because you know what? My religious doctrine that I've been put into me,
right.
I have to hold on to that because everything else is fake, but that's the truth. Really? He had to go through the process of understanding that the whole freaking thing is a show.
Yeah.
And as he began to walk through that, and one of my favorite lines, so people understand the world that we live in, so we can be bougie and we can, do the things that we like to do and wear the things that we like. Cyrus's comment in the movie, it's like, look, I know this steak is fake.
Right.
But it tastes so good. Right? It's so good.
This is
it's
where
like
people are at. Even people, that's what they call cognitive dissonance, right? You give somebody the truth and they get it and they see it for themselves. It makes perfect sense. They understand. They get that momentary enlightenment, right? And then what do? They turn around and they look at their friends and their family and they go, oh my God, right? I'm going to have to be this loner freak everyone's going to hate. So what do? They climb back into the lie and they continue living this lie. And I would venture to say, Clayton, that right now we're at that point where people are tired of living the lie and they're willing to stay in the truth. And at whatever the risk and the cost is, and I think those are the people that are really going to bring about this new world everyone's talking about. You can't bring about a new world when you're still living in this false, well, if you want to use the Matrix as the analogy, it's a great analogy. I mean, it's clear. But I mean, it like we have so much baggage. I mean, even, and I'm guilty of it like everybody else. You see a lot, but you still hold on to some precious lies because
it allows us to function in this environment, and
right.
it's not a matter of us being functional in the environment. It's a matter of us having the existence in this space that allows others to see what we are and what we're doing, to hopefully begin to understand, wait a minute, I can model that. I can do that. I do things. with what we do, there's things that I do and I try to do that put people in a position to go, wait a minute, why are you wearing that? What are you doing? Why do you drive that? Why are you doing these things? I'm like, because they're all manifestable, right? And if you function of like kind, like like those like us that understand this world, which is why I built our entire ecosystem the way that I did. It wasn't about accumulation of assets. It was about redistribution, because there's the two components, health, wealth, they're all both connected. You got to have both of them. If you don't believe me, call Steve Jobs, right? It's really simple.
Exactly. I think that's something, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
But it's understanding that, yes, we are not of this world, right? We are this world. And the whole game to understand, if you think they are going to try to destroy our species and they're doing this stuff, they know that you choose it, that it's us that dictates it. And then if you start to understand the 100 monkey theory and collective consciousness, and the fact that it's our job to be the examples to lift up the species, so we start to resonate higher, so the rest of the sheep begin to realize that, wait a minute, we're not sheep. What? Wait a minute, there's more to it here. There's this world around us. There is no fence, there is no spoon. Right. And the wolves will run with us if we just communicate with them, and we can tame them, and they'll actually protect the flock. They won't try to, oh shit, what's happening now, right? The whole thing starts to reconstruct and reconfigure, but it's us who does it. It's not them. There's 8 billion of us. There's maybe a couple 100,000 of them, right? I met a lot of them, right? There's not many of them, right? We can't get into that part because people would freak out with where we've been. They go, wait a minute, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, look, if you're of light, you can play in the dark, right? This is part of the thing you understand.
It's a fundamental structure, understanding of the structure of how reality is built. And I think that we're at that point where the magic of what we create is so profound that people don't realize that even their own limitations are a profound creation of that magic. They just have to redirect their energy and apply it in different ways. We're still not there, and we're still getting there, but we're like, that's kind of maybe what the Rainbow Bridge is about, when they talk about with Buddhism and trying to reach like nirvana, and the bodhisattvas stay back because they're trying to create this this interconnection between both of these frequency states, right?
What are you saying, that the Rainbow Bridge could be determined as illumination, and that the whole purpose going back to the beginning, which some would determine prior to this belief system that was created on this 2,000-year narrative, and then the German society had Rosicrucianism, that was Christian Rosencrantz, that wasn't even a figure that existed. It was just a bunch of allegories to get people to follow a mantra. But if you go back, one of my favorite areas of study when I was a child in middle school was Mesopotamia and the Assyrians, right? I was always drawn to them. And what's interesting is I met a woman here, actually the hairstylist that did Nancy Pelosi's hair back when COVID started, that put out the surveillance video. I met her here in town because she comes back and forth between here and LA. And we were talking when we first met. She's like, I'm Assyrian. I'm like, are you shitting me? I'm like, I've met Tartarians too. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Let's have I met one of my business associates in Cyprus. He's Turkish. His wife is Tartarian. And I'm like, and I went off on Tartarians. And he looked at me, and my wife and a couple of my colleagues and our rest of our friends at the table with us went, hold on, you're not joking about the stuff you were talking about being Tartarian, and that's real? I'm like, yeah, I'll be on there in a few. But the aspect of understanding this entire environment, you're like, oh, this is nuts, right? And the worlds that we exist in and where we come from and how they're all tied together, and that the sun, basically, light, has been the focus of everything scientifically and spiritually. Maybe the creation of religion and religious doctrine of all different kinds, because how many are there? God knows, right? You know, you get Taoism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. How many types of Christianity are there? I don't know, about 400. How do I know that? I live in the Bible Belt, and apparently if you don't go to the correct church, you're going to hell, even though they're all saying this supposedly the same thing. Why would someone build an entire mechanism designed to fragment humanity, of getting you to believe different paths of the same thing, that we come from light, we are modeled in the vision of light, and our job is to be like light? And maybe the entire philosophy was illumination, and the creation of the Illuminati was actually the scientists, that the smart people of humanity and society that were trying to understand that. And maybe one small group of people decided to hijack that because they're functional psychopaths and sociopaths, and they know that if they control just specific language, they'll keep you away from it, because it's all about illumination. It's all the entire time, because if we don't become illuminated, we are controllable.
Right. And I do agree that a lot of the symbologies and the terminologies in and of themselves are not dangerous. It's that they've been misappropriated and abused and put in our instead of being there, people have hijacked them.
Yes.
And these symbols in and of themselves are not bad. They're actually very, very powerful. Like alone the pineal gland symbol, which you see on the Sumerian tablets, right, which represents this higher knowledge, actually the connection, the conduit to hyperspace and this information, right? It's not bad. That's the eye, the all-seeing eye is not a bad symbol.
It's here.
It represents this idea of the pineal, the third eye, the pineal gland being the kind of the key. Manly P. Hall talks about it as being like, or not just him, but what's the other guy? I forget his name right now, but that said it was the seat of the soul, right? Because it is a controller of consciousness connecting to the body. Like the heart has a little pea-sized aspect, which is the controller of it. And if you take that little pea-sized thing away, the whole body collapses. Just like if you take away the pineal gland, then that connection, that conduit connection to our source field where we come from is interrupted. And I think
it gets into the whole narrative of understanding our entire existence, of what we truly are and where we're going, which gets back to the clinoptilolite aspect.
Right. So let's jump back into, we just got up on a few branches or sort of galaxies.
But it's the fun part of quantum mechanics, right? Because it's all connected. Right. And it's the polarity of men versus women, right? Men, we function in boxes. We can pretty much do one thing at a time. Women are this big bundle of copper wire, and everything's connected and everything's firing constantly. And it's a matter of making sure that neural network is constantly balanced and happy and running smoothly. Because if not, it creates abject chaos. And that's the divine feminine. That's the aspect energetically of the world that we live in, of what's happening since 2020, is we're starting to see, why do they call it Mother Earth and not Mr. Earth? Divinity, right? But as we were talking on, and I've got a couple minutes and I got to hop off, and then we'll do another one of these here very soon.
No worries. Yeah. Let's just round out this whole issue about this,
of understanding Clino, right? So as I was touching on, you've got this one substance that is able to do all of these things and has done all of these things. Yeah, it's been used in pharma because if you know how to play with it, right? That if you take the powder, and if you look at most of the pills and caplets that people have consumed as far as pharmaceuticals, guess what they use as the binder to make those? They use clinoptilolite. Why? Because it's a crystal, even though it can look like a white powder. Right. And so you think nothing of it. You think nothing of kitty litter. You'd never play with kitty litter. I mean, shit, it's kitty litter, right? Cats pee on it and they poop on it. Why would you ever think of using a substance? Or why would someone that maybe understands the power of it make it into something that people would think is so easily disregarded? And maybe you should get the cheapest kitty litter that you can get, which is clinoptilolite, versus all the synthetic kitty litters that they now use. And after your kitties use that, maybe you should take that and maybe you should throw it in a bunch of dirt and compost and mix it all in and let it feed your plants. But that's a whole other scenario. But the interesting aspect is clinoptilolite is the most powerful of this. It's a sodium aluminosilicate. It is nature's most abundant, interestingly enough, and bioavailable source of orthosilicic acid, or bioavailable silica. Silicon dioxide is how we have to talk about it, because if you make a label claim, you have to explain it for regulatory authorities to get them to understand it. But when you look at programming and you have someone that's like, oh well, they're using this in pharma and it can create nanostructures. Yeah, it can, because hold on, it binds graphene. So if you're creating nanostructures, yes, you can use that to attach graphene to it to make supermolecules. But let's look at the real science of that. So what you're saying is it has the ability to bind graphene. It has the ability to bind viruses. It has the ability to bind mercury, lead, aluminum, cesium, strontium, gadolinium, all these other, glyphosate, all of these other environmental components that, yes, if you were using it from a bioscience engineering standpoint over here, that you could create different nanostructures with it. But what if you had a nanobiotechnologist with a background in bioscience engineering and 20 years in history that's done cloning, that's done molecular design, that understands quantum physics, that maybe went back to Harvard and did 3 years at Harvard in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering, that maybe has, gone to Cornell and done two programs in pharmaceutical management and nutritional counseling, that happened to spend 20 years in biotech at Pfizer, kind of important, Alexion, Biogen, IDEC, Johnson & Johnson, UCB, Bristol Myers Squibb, kind of important, and Janssen. Maybe when she was at Bristol Myers Squibb 17 years ago, she was working on HIV research and mRNA vaccines. I don't know, is that relevant? Maybe. And maybe about 20 years ago, when she was at Pfizer in the C-suite and the former director of the CIA, was going over the fact that there's no longer going to be nuclear war. It'll never happen, but it's going to be biological, and Pfizer would be at the forefront of it. I don't know. Is that important in today's world? Maybe, just maybe. And maybe there was a prophecy put over her about 25 years ago that she was put here to heal people in a war on healthcare. And she's had a brain tumor, a spine tumor, and Lyme disease, and every kind of skin cancer.
You're talking about your wife, Dr. Christina Ram here, obviously. And you're talking about how the fact that this unique skill set and exposure and life's path that she's had has led her through a kind of a dedication toward devising things to help counteract this biological warfare, has led her to decode or figure out a way to, rather than using clinoptilite for making toxins in the body, to actually remove those toxins from the body, right?
Yes, because if you have something that you can use in a lab that can structure and hold on to those things, couldn't you also take that same thing and maybe process it, load it, because you can load it, but you wouldn't load it with all those things because you'd want it to go get those things. You'd want to load it with what the body needs if you're going to remove those things, which happens to be trace minerals, which happens to come from sea salt, which happens to be us. And then if you know that it already binds those things over here, but if you send that sentry into an environment that they've already put those things in, but you program it and code it with love, intention, some frequencies, the key trace minerals, and through the process that you did from a bioscience engineering standpoint, the bioavailable silica, you didn't destroy it in process, you actually made it exchangeable, because that's what makes this crystal so special. And you delivered it, it would scavenge and grab onto and bind and hold on to and remove that which you think is the problem, because biotech's been using it to program. You would actually create a mechanism to deprogram or allow your body to, wait for it, unlearn what it's been programmed to do by what's been put in you over the last 7 generations.
Beautiful.
Mic drop.
Well, that's an info bomb, I think, that you've sort of dropped out today for the audience, and I think you've got to run, I believe. Yep. So I don't want to hold you up any longer, but I've had one of the most interesting conversations I think I've had, well, probably that I've had with anybody in terms of this material, and
let's do more.
We'll do more. We'll have to do more, absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to helping people get past these blocks with respect to it. And I think what another aspect you touched on, which people should know, is that the reason this is particularly the distribution method that you've devised for getting this material out there. It's very unique in itself. And, it might seem to some people like the products are pricey. I mean, they're not like cheap vitamins at Walmart. If you get involved in the process of putting this information and knowledge and these products out there, you actually benefit from it financially as well. So you can
Yeah.
it's kind of like an ecosystem, which I think is really cool. People need to know that because it isn't just about money. It isn't just about earning and becoming wealthy. It's about just spreading this.
Well, we should be. All of us, if we create value, this is the important part, right? And this is what's been done throughout history. Those who create value earn value, right? So if you're a blacksmith and you were making horseshoes back in the day, or maybe you were able to take just a piece of iron and you threw it in the fire and you took it out and you pounded the hell out of it and you started to grind it and you threw it back in the fire and you forged something into something that was really sharp and really powerful, and you sold them, you created value, you received value. We live in a world now that we are all connected, right? We're 6 degrees from 6.5 billion people. We head to India in 2 days. I'm going to go work with our group that works down there that's got access to 1.6 billion people on their network. Kind of dope, right? But when you understand the last part we're going to hit on, and then I got to bounce. You talked about our frequencies and our aura, right? And what comes from us. Is it not weird that our aura stretches 3 feet when we're doing our job, 3 feet outside of our entire system? And would it not make sense that if you were going to fracture the network, that if you knew it was 3 feet from me and 3 feet from you, that I would want people 6 feet apart? I'm not saying that they understand. I'm just saying that they're really good at guessing. So,
and they're really good at following orders.
right? And it's the key part of just knowing these things. And if you understand that we are all connected, and that as a business, if you're going to create a business, and my dad taught me this, I asked my dad, what pleased him most about having a veterinary clinic for 40 plus years. And he said, there's 20 people that their livelihood and their way of life depends on what we do. That his staff, and he took care of those 20 people. And then they took care of their clients, and they didn't charge them a lot. They didn't overcharge like many veterinarians do. But if you provide a great service and you provide quality, there is an expense to it, right? That's the exchange medium. But what if you understood that exchange medium and you said, you know what, I got to spend money on advertising because we have to promote. But if you also understand the network's already connected, why don't you just invest in people? Right? Because people create the value. If your customers like something, they're going to consume it. If you create great outcomes, you create quality, you're going to buy it. Like my tailor. My tailor in Istanbul is one of the best in the world. I pay him to make me look pretty because he's really good at what he doesn't do it for free. Right? I don't have to pay the exorbitant prices that you'd go to by going to a retail chain. I go to my guy and he's like, dude, I'm going to make you look amazing. Do you like cashmere? I'm like, yes, we know the frequency of wool. Please. Right? So in creating value, you receive value. And you just have to understand that everything is about flow, right? Bruce Lee said it the best, be like water. Right? It's the aspect of economics that money is never supposed to be stagnant. I don't believe that anybody needs to be a liquid billionaire. I don't. Because if you want generational wealth, you can have a couple $100 million. Your kids, your great grandkids, your great great grandkids never going to be concerned unless they're just complete jack-offs. Right? So if you have the ability to create mechanisms, why would you not just bring the community with you? Those that are actually the ones who create all your value. Do you know if Amazon would have done this, and it was Amazon that I used as one of my models in creating this entire ecosystem? Had Amazon just said, hey, look, you know what, with your username, with your code that you create your account with, if you share that with your friends and they create an account, and anything that they buy, we're going to give you a little bit as a credit to shop on Amazon. Do you know Amazon would not have competition? They would control global commerce. And I'm so glad that they didn't, because we got to.
Yes. Very nice.
Let's go.
Well, congratulations and good job. And thank you for doing what you're doing out there. And I'm so honored to finally connect with you and meet with you. And
I'm disappointed it took so long. Look at how much fun we had initially. Let's do this again, but I got to bounce.
We will do it. Take care, my brother.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. So that was my conversation with Clayton Thomas of Root. Certainly was one of the more fascinating discussions I've had with someone in a long time. And it really went a long way toward clarifying some of the issues about zeolite that very few people have really gotten into before. And because I think our chemistry is so good, there's definitely going to be further discussions and more conversations in the future that we can use to get into some material that we weren't able to cover this time around. So look for that in the near future. If you actually want to try their root products, Clayton has set up a referral system kind of based on a social ecosystem so that everybody can participate in the revenue stream. If that's something you're interested in doing, I'm going to include a link on the screen, my own referral link below, which I'm also going to add below the video as a clickable link that you can go to the site and you can log in and become a subscriber. I'd also recommend you become a Root Prime member. Both of these are free. So the advantage, of course, of the Root Prime is that on your second order, you get free shipping. And the best thing I think of all is that you get your own referral link so that you can pass it along to other people as well. I don't really think this is ultimately about money or becoming wealthy on it. It's about sharing intel and information and knowledge to help people protect themselves and to detox from all the stuff that's going on in our environment right now. And I think that's a good thing. So I hope you see it that way. I hope you try it out. Thanks for watching the interview. This is me signing off. Have a great day. Cheers.